Welcome back to the KDPG Sunday edition. High-tech jobs, seems every city wants them, but only a handful are really getting them. A new report from the Brookings Institution looked at America's innovation sector. Think software, big data jobs. Those jobs have not spread far and wide. Just 5 metro areas have captured 90% of high-tech job growth since 2009. Boston, you can guess them, Boston, San Francisco, San Jose, Seattle, San Diego. So what about Pittsburgh? Our city has made a splash, certainly in AI and robotics. Look at the development of self-driving car technology. But this Brookings report found that Pittsburgh doesn't have anything like the job growth of places like Boston and Silicon Valley. So how does Pittsburgh get a bigger piece of the pie? Our next guest is focused on doing that every day. Pardon me, Audrey Russo, President and CEO of the Pittsburgh Technology Council. What is the Tech Council? Let's start there and we'll move on.
Well, the Tech Council is the largest and oldest technology trade association that was actually started here in Pittsburgh 38 years ago. And the intention was to make sure that this was the best region in the world to build tech and innovation, because the people who founded the organization said, we know the amount of innovation that's sitting here in our universities and in advanced manufacturing. We need to get together and make sure that we can move the needle forward. So fast forward, almost 4 decades later, we're having some of the similar conversations as what you've laid the groundwork for.
Yeah. So the Brookings Institution looked at the state of the industry nationwide, and they found that places like Pittsburgh are doing okay, but we're losing our skilled workforce to the bigger metros, to Boston and the rest. And we don't have that kind of gravitational pull here. For a while there, we allowed ourselves to dream that Amazon might change everything, but it didn't. And the people who got Amazon, look at Queens, aren't necessarily thrilled with it either. But I digress. The idea has been put forth by Brookings. Let's take Pittsburgh and Madison, Wisconsin, and several other cities that have the beginnings, that are doing okay, but maybe idling, and let's light them on fire by giving them directing massive amounts of federal research and development funding. There's the list of the other potential next Silicon Valleys. So what do you think of that idea? Is that realistic, or is it pie in the sky?
Well, let me just sort of set the table in one way. We don't need to replicate and want to become Silicon Valley. We're never going to be that, and that's okay. Because really what we need to do is look at our assets. And what are our assets? And our assets have been around for over 100 years. We make things. We have asset to energy. We have incredible universities that are doing an enormous amount of innovation in terms of research. And we also have to remember that a lot of who we are today, while we don't want to look backwards, it does guide us in terms of who we are in the future. So the issue for Pittsburgh is that we have a shrinking population, not just a shrinking in jobs. We have a shrinking population. These other cities that are more expensive have high growth and high density.
Sure, yeah.
Could it be, is that a chicken and an egg kind of thing? We have a shrinking population, it's an older population and it is shrinking, but if great jobs are here, you're going to draw more people. But you can't get great jobs if your population is shrinking. I mean, you see what I'm saying? There's a conundrum there.
But I think that the biggest asset is that we are actually, quote unquote, producing incredible talent here. And that is why we've seen since the Amazon bid, that we've seen the kind of notoriety that's come to Pittsburgh, because they understand the kinds of skills that we are producing out of our universities. So the growth, what we'll see is steady growth, not incremental growth that's going to be massive. And that might be just what our city can handle.
But this study says it's not good enough to just maintain the level that we're maintaining, along with those other cities on the list. They're saying that it's an emergency. That's their word. It's an emergency, that the heartland is hollowing out, and these great opportunities are going coastal, and we're going to be left behind. And if we don't actively grow and get bigger, more and more of the skilled workforce that we have here, the genius minds that we have here, will leave to go to those other places because of the gravitational pull that they have. People said one of the reasons Amazon wouldn't consider Pittsburgh is that they didn't want to be in a place where if somebody comes to Pittsburgh to work for Amazon and then they don't like it, there's not 12 or 14 other tech companies where they could probably get a job. So they want to be in a place where there's already an established tech sector. So like the rich are getting richer, and those of us who are struggling are losing just by not advancing. You agree with that theory?
I halfway agree with that. I don't agree with it in terms of the emergency. We've been working on this for 4 decades. So in terms of the emergency, we've turned things around here in Pittsburgh. We have. We have now jobs that are attracting people that are in the top 10 in the United States between the ages of 25 and 34 that have advanced degrees. We are known for that. We also have to remember that the United States, since they've been collecting mobility data, which is since 1948, less people are even moving. Less people. So where do you catch people when they're moving? You catch them when they come out of these universities. Right. And that's where you have the opportunity. But it's a fascinating time in the United States because people are moving to the most expensive cities. People are moving to places where there's an incredible amount of diversity. People are moving to places where there's a lot of stimulation in terms of their whole life. How do they live their whole life? The cultural amenities, which we have been blessed to have that here. But it is a combination of those kinds of things. So the trick is figuring out what are the stages where we can really capture people and afford them the opportunities here in this region. The other thing is that we haven't been successful in attracting companies that have headquarter locations here. When you look at the companies that are all here in Robotics Row and you look at AI, a lot of those companies are R&D, research and development. And so we have some of the best and brightest people that are working on the most complex problems, but they're not necessarily the same people who are building the companies of tomorrow. And I think that's your point, Ken. The point is, how do you have it so that if we move here to Pittsburgh and you have a partner and that partner's working in marketing or in finance and things like that, where are those opportunities in case one thing doesn't work out? Most people don't even stay in jobs, no less companies, for more than 3 to 4 years.
When you hear about, actually, let me let Jerry in here and then I'll save my question.
What's the best way to attract that company? Because I think that's a great point. R&D might be here, but you don't have, Google's in headquartered here,
Right,
for instance.
right.
How do you get that? And do you kind of aim a little small and say, look, just bring your headquarters here and we'll build it. If you bring it here, if you bring it here and build it, we'll make it good. How does your organization or how does the city get involved in that?
Well, one of the things that we have to remember is that the companies that are on the NASDAQ today, if you looked at the companies that are on the NASDAQ today over the last decade, you never heard of them before. You never heard of them. So what we need to be doing, and including our organization and other organizations that do this kind of work, is looking at the world. Who are those companies all around the world that are going to be those next 10 to 20 companies that are going to be on the NASDAQ? And many of them you and I don't even know about. So it's really Pittsburgh out in the world and Pittsburgh being around the world so that our notoriety and our footprint and our fingerprints are around the world, because that's where those companies are blossoming. And so to get those kind of headquarters here, we need to be outside of Pittsburgh to be really trying to convince them and entice them to come here. And it's not necessarily through subsidies, but it's through the assets that we have now and articulating that and marketing it.
This region was ready to pony up a couple of several billion dollars in incentives to Amazon. We talked about that with you. There were high hopes, which were ultimately not fulfilled. But at the time, everybody was saying, probably you, even if we don't get Amazon, this is a great exercise for us to evaluate our strengths, look at our weaknesses, and all the attention that we got for being a finalist. So what tangible things can you point to today, a year after we didn't get Amazon, but we went through the process of auditioning?
Well, I mean, the tangible kinds of things might not necessarily be materialized in this very moment, but I can tell you that going around the world and in the work that I do, people know about Pittsburgh. People are now having conversations, whether those are businesses. We just recently traveled to the United Kingdom, took tech companies to the United Kingdom to look at expansion. That you go to London, you go to Manchester, and they're saying, Pittsburgh, we heard about that. You were in the finals. What does that mean? How can we partner together? So that changing of our legacy in terms of being a steel town or being a smoky city really was helped through the Amazon work. The other thing is, what's happened here locally is that we're seeing new investors start to come into Pittsburgh. And these are venture capitals and private equity firms that are coming in, and it takes time. But they're coming in now, and they're saying, we see that there are assets here. So my prediction is over the next 2 to 3 years, you're going to see more of an uptick in terms of outside investment.
Last question. I want you to be very frank. When you hear about the traffic issues in San Francisco and you hear about how nobody can afford to live there, the
Right.
rents are outrageous, does a part of you say, yes?
Well, I love that, right?
Right?
I
Yeah.
love that. But
Yeah.
you do know that when when you're young and you're coming out of a university, whether it's undergraduate and graduate, and you get a chance to work with one of these companies, you say, okay, I can still live with 4 or 5 of my friends
Yeah, but
in a tight little
idea
place.
being that their misfortunes can somehow benefit us.
Absolutely. It absolutely can. I'm thrilled. Thank you for
Very
having
very
us.
candid of you. Thank you, Audrey Russo. Take a break. Back with the final thought in a moment.